in the convention center of today, which is basically you've got your main meeting room, you've got breakout rooms, you've got full internet connectivity, recognizing the world is digital, you've got exhibition spaces, you've got screens that come down and move all over. You have all that flexibility in a convention center. So I think that essence of flexibility and being able to move with the times is the thing that has left KCC.
KRA is very inflexible. There was the idea to build one and very strong in Vision 2030 to get a proper conventional center at Bomas of Kenya as we talk.
Yes.
And one of the beauty of that was actually to have another ground from Bomas of Kenya to the national park. So little people could walk underground and go to the national park. Secondly, it had a very interesting thing because you could take your right flight from Wilson to Masai Mara, and from the airport it was easy to go to access there. Today, and thank God to the expressway, and thank God to the opening near the Harasalase, it was difficult accessing KCC. Yeah.
Right, but Geturo, you were once a director general of Vision 2030.
Right.
You should have broadened the vision of, when it comes to the social pillar as well, KICC should have been in the pipeline so that we can know how we can actually make it a revenue streaming.
You really want us to go to the detail why you didn't do a convention center at Bomas of Kenya?
Yes, yes. I mean, Kenyans deserve the right to know.
Talk to these Kenyans. We are all greedy. Actually, there was this, I think it's one of the most famous hotels in India, a chain of them. And they really wanted to come there and do as a PPP. But he, lacking in his wisdom, was demanding certain money up front.
Mr. Iraqi here?
Yes. So they said, forget it.
I can see they are very good, well-orchestrated plans to tarnish my good name.
If it was ever good.
Otherwise,
my very good name.
If it was ever good. But the whole idea was, how do somebody ask certain amounts or certain upfront? And they say, forget it. The other parts of Africa we can go into. That was really the biggest challenge we have. There are a chain of hotels who have, and do a convention center, they have a chain. And the one I remember strongly, and we had meetings, was from India. And I couldn't move. The same thing. We had the whole concept of intelligent traffic lights.
Yes.
Dodora, turning it into generating power. But in our wisdom, we say, kitu kidogo, as McPhee would say.
Kitu kidogo. And this is what actually we had on the front page of a Business Daily yesterday, that US is flagging Kenya over bribes, extortion in public tenders. Top officials say US firms, top official says US firms asked for bribes to secure deals. US includes the anti-corruption clause in New Deal. I wanted just to talk about a little bit, maybe we'll talk about it later, but still, just adding to what Professor Gituro is talking about, nchi ya kitu kidogo. Isn't that what really happened with the cement factory?
The stage now is
kitu kubwa. When you remember also Dangote was here seeking to make investments. And still, we had bribes, extortion being asked from him. And what did he opt to do?
Yeah, thanks.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, Dangote, I think what they forgot is that he has many options. He set up
today you forgot our issue.
A huge enterprise in the US. He invested, US also has got low-income regions, regions where there is purposefulness to create jobs and so on. He's investing there. I guess he has options everywhere. But the kitu kidogo thing, and I would like the business people around the table to comment on this. I would like the professor himself, and I like Patrick here to comment on this. Just where do you situate these transactional issues that arise in all businesses? There's no exception. How it's done maybe is what varies, what coat it puts on. But I guess that ours is a little crude. I remember that in our young days, and I want to put it very nicely because this is public television, we were categorizing who would ask for fare in advance if your date is coming to see you. Who would want, fare up front and so on. And we found that, broadly speaking, if you sourced those from Uganda, they didn't ask for fares up front. The fare would come along the way, you not even know when you paid it. But the Kenyans had it right before they leave their grandmother's houses or wherever they might be coming from, and so on. And you can, of course, work with greater detail around that. So,
good memories.
So I think there are ways in which, as an image of the country, we really must clamp down and change the way this is happening. It is too frequent. We hear these murmurs all the time. Americans are not totally innocent in this kind of thing, but they are very quick to point out, which is good also. So I guess as a country we should look inward and try and correct it. In my many years in the US, there have been local cases where in their own settings, their own companies, and usually very well corrected companies, were also accused of this same kind of thing. So their business Enron tells you something about what happens about this kind of thing. I think it's the way you do it, and we must style up. I really think we must style up. And usually when they say corruption, someone looks at the next person, or you look at some senior person or something. But it's right there with the person looking around. And I think that's something we must begin to tackle. It's gone so far, even in the villages you get it. Yeah, that's a terrible thing.
So the culture is really backed into the system.
Yeah, and I really must find a way of cracking it. We have to find countries that had it. China, I think, might be one good example. As a visitor to China, frequently you pick up these cultural things, and people would say, in the Chinese culture, scratch my back, I scratch your back. You can do a favor to somebody, it will stay within the community for a long time until there's a counter favor from the other part, whatever that other part of the community might be. You give, I give. And I think it's true of life generally. But it can be carried to a point where cultural things shift into purely cash transactions then. It ceases to be, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, that kind of thing. I think we really must look at this.
So it becomes a mode of transaction.
A mode of transaction.
Yeah, so you budget also for the cultural practices.
Yes.
But I think Patrick was on a good move when they began the conversation around fighting corruption. Was the one and only conference that I've ever had being fronted with a multi-agency approach since 2018.
Yeah.
We should have kept up. We should have kept up with the discussion. Is it finances that?
No. I think that conference was brought about because of the anger that there was around corruption at that time. But the outcome of that beat so many people that getting it together again was a problem. And we are working towards having another one in the not too distant future.
What do you mean the outcome?
If you look at what happened, the end of the conference was marked by a request by Wananchi, and a memo was read to the president, the then president, about what Wanjiku wants from him in terms of taming corruption. A similar thing was read to the Chief Justice. A similar one was read to the speakers of the various houses and so forth. We actually gave them that and said, we will come back in 1 year and see what you have done to meet Wanjiku's demands, right? That was where now the issues began to, to sort of get people a bit afraid. Yeah. Some of the outcomes of that particular conference was obviously the various agencies, the judiciary, the prosecution, the AG and all the rest, went to Naivasha to meet, because we were telling them at that time how many prosecutions have succeeded in this country on corruption. How many have actually happened? 4 years down the line, how many people are in court for bribery and stuff? It's gone up, right? So the wheels are turning very slowly, but not as fast as we would like to see. Yeah. So what needs to happen, and the thing about that Bomas anti-corruption conference was that it was led from the top. But as you know, the top tends to get distracted by the next big thing, right? And they leave that behind. So it needs a continuous and constant action over a period of 5 to 7 years to change that in the country. Is any government of this country committed enough to say, we are going to talk about this every day for the next 7 years. And we are going to make sure that things happen. Are we going to change the civil service code so that we don't just transfer people from one place to another? They get, like in the private sector, if you're found to have put your finger in the till and it's obvious, you're out, finished. But in the civil service, you're interdicted, you're kept somewhere and whatever it is, and they have to form a committee. And then within about 6-8 months, 1 year, you have been transferred somewhere and everything's gone quiet. Yeah?
Right.
Like that. So there needs to be some very, very strong fundamental changes in the country. Will Parliament pass that? I doubt. Will the leadership of the country be able to say that we are now going to make sure that the ministries, if people mess around, they're going to be out? Is that going to happen? No. Because as Patrick Obath, as a minister for whatever it is, Ministry X, I've got my cronies and whatever it is employed there, or I've agreed with, with Professor Iraqi that, you put some of yours, put some of mine in your place, and I'll put some of yours in my place so that it doesn't look obvious. But once they're there, they've come in, they're protected. Am I going to be the one to say I'm going to kick them out? So I think there needs to be a fundamental change at the top of the country, the leadership, that each leader is seen to be actively against corruption, and they take action immediately. Not say send it to DCI, send it to Nani, whatever it is, because when it's criminal actions, yeah, you don't keep somebody there and keep DCI, whatever, investigating, because that's what happens. Yeah, and DCI is investigating, and here I am destroying the evidence. Yeah, so we need to change our country. We need to change the thinking, and it must start from the top. From number one, has to start that particular thing.
Right, if you may remember also, I think when procurement to officers were becoming a big issue, there was, I don't know if it really paid off. What is this lying detecting?
Lie detector.
The lying detector that the exercise they had to go through.
Polygraph.
Yeah, the polygraph. No, polygraph is,
yeah.
It's the polygraph. We've gone through some exercises in this country. I don't know if the procurement officers went through the polygraph so that it could really show whether they're lying about the procurement. Do we need to go that way? Yeah, so that we use mechanisms, especially now that we'll be talking about the Treasury single account system, that they're trying to mainstream to plug these holes where we're losing public funds, and we can see is huge amount that we're losing through corruption. You wanted to say something?
Yes, sir.
I was just trying to flag out to see
because he has pointed at me. He has pointed at me. So the whole country might think I'm a corrupt person. But I think they're just envious of my cleanness. I don't think I want corruption to be a way of life, as my colleague is putting it. I understand what he's saying, that in certain countries, certain cultures, there are some transaction costs that are official. Even some of the documents I get from some professionals, they put something like expediting fee. Something to me it's not really corruption, but it's a borderline. But in my opinion, the corruption in this country simply shows our level of political and economic immaturity. Because we cannot claim to be a country that is doing so well in all other areas, but when it comes to corruption, we behave like people who are not 60 years old. If somebody is 60 years old, there's certain things we don't expect from him. So in Kenya, I'm not saying there should be no corruption, but at 60 years of independence, celebrating 60 years of independence, these things should be less of a problem. We should have matured over that. And I think one problem we have in this country, and all the people who have done business here will agree with me, is that from day one, we misunderstood capitalism. Capitalism was never about making money. It's about pursuing your interests, but also benefiting at the same time. So you deliver a good broadcast like this, we reward you. You deliver a good fertilizer, we reward you. You become a good teacher, we reward you. But this habit of people thinking that money grows on trees, you can pick money anywhere, is what has made things so bad. That we don't understand that you get money because you have added value, not because you happen to be there. But my biggest worry is that the people who are expected to mitigate or reduce corruptions are sometimes involved in it. You see, you have talked about parliament, you have talked about other arms of the government. The people who are supposed to make sure that certain vices are not becoming widespread. But if they're involved in that, What are we supposed to do? And that's why I've always insisted that the best way to fight corruption in this country is to involve the Kenyan public, the Kenyan voters, the Kenyan citizens. They are the ones who suffer. As long as they don't act, as long as they leave their MPs, their MCS, and the rest to act, they'll never act. So we want voters to be directly involved. So that if I'm an MCA or an MP or whoever I am, and I've been involved in a scandal that is involved corruption, they should be able to call me and tell me, go home, let's get another person. And then the next group of readers will realize that they don't have as much power as they have. It is the citizen who have power. Now we have to wait for 5 years. How much damage shall I have done in 5 years? And if I know I'm not going to be voted in, you know I have to build a security and a buffer. And the last thing we need to do is we need to make Kenyans feel secure. Because one thing that drives corruption in this country is that people will feel insecure. I don't know about my salary tomorrow. I don't know whether I'll get pension. I don't know whether I'll get a job. I don't know whether my living standards will be maintained. So let's have a very good social security system, and some of these vices will reduce.
Yeah. Start at the top, start at the bottom, start in the middle. You know, like every issue, every level has its role to play. And if they move in sync, then there's a fair chance that you can reduce this. You can get a certain irreducible, maybe you can't get reducible minimum, but you can reduce it significantly. Because to tend towards an irreducible minimum, you'll be redefining the very definition of the human being and the way they live, you know, since creation. There's always been an element that, if you look at it with wisdom of hindsight, was perhaps never really a result of full transparency. But we can reduce significantly. The kind of corruption that is felt, the pain that is felt in the village by my old mother or grandmother is different from that which is felt by the elites out here in Nairobi. They are both corruptions.
That's true.
But we do need to get the village to work without the corruption they perceive. And we do need to get the top to work without the corruption we know does exist. I think it takes determination. Now, what examples do we have globally? The way I see it, where it has worked in the political domain, power has emanated from outside of government, from institutions that govern, but outside of government in place. The Chinese have a very good example where they are blamed to have been a fairly corrupt society up to 1948, before the revolution, and where they have progressively used different methods, some of them completely drastic, like that during the Cultural Revolution. Ghana has used some very drastic ways. You remember the killing fields on their beaches and so on, just to eliminate a layer of leadership that they considered corrupt. I had a good friend of mine when I was working at the African Development Bank in Abidjan. There were next door neighbors who we would gossip about them a lot. He was Ghanaian. And he talked about this senior judge and a woman. There are many women judges that were affected, so you can't pinpoint one. They weren't able to track down to one. But who was picked from the dining table? The security just came and said, addressed her extra courteously and said there was something really quick which the head of state wanted to get clearance on and on. She stepped out at the table, she never came back. And the children were beginning to wonder what's happened. She never came back. Next thing, she was one of those that were shot out on the beach. Now, that's just, but there are many, at that time, how many did Ghana shoot? He must have killed well over 10 people, senior people, very senior people. When Jerry Rawlings was the guy there. Now, things have deteriorated again, but I don't know that they will ever get to the level which they thought they had got to. I think we have got to a point where, when we used to make a joke, in Kenya, if you wanted to buy a postage stamp, you could just walk over to the counter, get a postage stamp and so on. You didn't have to use somebody to get you behind the queue for you to access postage stamps, as we used to see in some countries in West Africa and so on, where companies, and I think the professors would know, there must be case studies, where companies had stand-in people, corporations had stand-in people at the postal office, the telecoms office, to make international calls, get access to call making, who would then connect your company each time you wanted to make phone calls. And in Kenya, it was very straightforward. You didn't need any of that at that time. We nearly got to that until technology has now broken loose all of that corruption nonsense that we had. So I really don't think we need to make it a standalone item that should move from regime to regime tackling it. And you can't get there unless the Wananchi, unless the Wanjikus rise up and say, you're not serving us.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you look at, in fact, I will pick from my brother here. If you look what happened in Senegal, in the young man, the 44, as a president now, and I think resonates with the point that XN is raising. The people, excuse me, the people in Senegal made a very deliberate choice. We are not going to choose Sonko. This guy who was put in fact, he got out of a campaign and won on one thing, that he's clean. So the people have to make that choice, who they elect. There was in Singapore, and perhaps I don't know why we are shy. No, Singapore is a very case that it took them a year to do what you say, to audit you, to go through. Is Patrick, is Iraqi, or myself worth to be the president? 1 year, searching. So even when you come there, there's a whole thing behind you, who you are. But that commitment by the 190, that's the point I'm making. The commitment by the people say, this is a clean person who get there. It's a different, it's what we need to. However, whether that person really goes by what they say is a different, and that's why now we bring check and balances. And one of the things, and he can remember in November, we were somewhere in Hamburg, and we never saw anybody in our room. It's actually, we are working with AI. That minimized any money you can transact with anybody. There's a need to leverage on those technologies. I always give this example of the DR, driving license. When we used to get it manually, you could imagine the queue from near your house, Patrick, all the way to the telecom building. Now you get your cell phone, you get your. So there are areas really we can leverage in terms of that. But first and foremost, not wonder the discussion we are starting there. Why is FI going to Rwanda? Why is it going to Rwanda? The leadership there. But that leadership, it's you and I to really interrogate, go through who are we putting in parliament. Now, perhaps the corruption is saying even the village. We need even first to start with the village. Because they will go there, and God forbid 2027, you have gone all this nonsense of whatever, you forget. I can imagine the kind of money will be poured in the rural areas in 2027. You probably forgot what they want. I remember one time Raila Odinga saying, Kenyans are like wattle, a gere. You know, a lion will be chasing it, the lion takes a back seat, it forgets. And probably that's what happened in 2027. But I think the starting point is for us Kenyans to say, yes, Tiba wants to go for the president, let's check him, how rich where he is. If we can get that, get the right people in it, because it starts from the top, my brother, it starts from the top. It can't be anything else. If the president woke up today and say, I don't want this nonsense, and start by demonstrating himself that he's addressing that nonsense, we shall follow through.
Indeed.
And that leadership is not just the president, even in your own house. You're the leader in the house.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, let's back on to some stories right now where we want to train our focus on Ghana, where Ghana has agreed to support the candidature of Azimio leader Raila Odinga for the position of African Union Commission chairperson. President William Ruto, while announcing the move, said Kenya will in return back Ghana's bid for the Commonwealth leadership. KTN's political affairs reporter Emmanuel To start us off.
Azimio leader Raila Odinga's bid to succeed the outgoing AU Commission chairperson Musa Faki received yet another boost Tuesday, with Ghana announcing it will support his candidature. Speaking in Accra, Ghana, during a state visit, President William Ruto said President Nana Akufo-Addo had agreed to support the former premier.
Your Excellency, my dear brother, I thank you most sincerely for accepting to support Kenya's candidature for the position of the chairperson of the Africa Union Commission 2025-2028, which has been initiated following comprehensive stakeholder engagement process across government. Kenya's candidature is informed by our leading role in enhancing and sustaining the Pan-African agenda.
The purpose of this visit by the Kenyan president is to reaffirm the ties of cooperation and the bonds of friendship that our two countries attach to our relations with each other.
The head of state adding that Kenya will also return the favor by backing Ghana's bid to take the Commonwealth Secretary General position.
I have assured His Excellency that Kenya will support the Republic of Ghana for the candidature of Honorable Shirley Bochwe, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, for the position of Secretary General of the Commonwealth for the period 2024-2029. Excellency, this presents an opportunity for Kenya and Ghana to collaborate.
President Ruto is set to continue drumming up support for Odinga in the neighboring Guinea-Bissau with an official visit immediately after Ghana, with a meeting slated between him and President Umaro Sissoco Embalo. The trip to the two countries come as Ruto and Odinga continue a multi-pronged approach of campaign where they are said to campaign together for the AUC job, albeit separately. After the trip to the west, President Ruto is set to head north with a trip to Egypt and another visit to Zimbabwe. On his part, the former premier will also look south with stopovers in Zimbabwe, Malawi, Angola, Zambia, Botswana, and South Africa this month and in May. President Ruto jetted out of the country Tuesday evening and held a meeting with the Kenyan diaspora living in Ghana. The president adding that the Kenyans in diaspora remit $4 billion annually to Kenya, and this could rise to $5 billion this year. Emmanuel Toh, KTN News, Nairobi.
The ODM party now wants Kenya Revenue Authority Chairman Anthony Mwaura and Kenya Power Board Chairperson Joy Mudivo to resign a day after the two were appointed by the ruling party UDA to oversee its grassroots elections. According to ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna, the two cannot serve two masters, which are the public and the UDA party, at the same time, and termed the move as dictatorship and partisanship, I should say, in the management of public affairs. KTN Political Affairs reporter David Mudoka has more on this.
Barely 24 hours after President William Ruto's UDA party picked Kenya Revenue Authority Chairman Anthony Mwaura as the chairperson of its National Elections Board and Kenya Power Board Chair Joy Mudivo as the chairperson of its Electoral Dispute Resolution Committee, ODM party has taken issue with the appointments. According to the opposition party, Mwaura and Mudivo cannot hold public office and at the same time run the affairs of a political party, yet they enjoy salaries obtained from taxpayers from all political formations.
Consequently, we demand that all those people who have been named as UDA officials must immediately resign from public service. There is no way they will serve two masters, the public and the UDA party.
But in a quick rejoinder, UDA party justified the appointments, saying Mudivo and Mwaura are not public officers, referring to a letter addressed to Attorney General Justin Muturi in September last year. The UDA party held the opinion that since salaries and benefits of chairpersons and board members are not generated from the consolidated fund or directly provided by Parliament, but rather from revenue generated from the parastatals and corporations they steer, then their positions are not offices in the public service.
We take the position that this development is wrong. It is a recipe for chaos and dictatorship and partisanship in the management of public affairs.
The Nairobi senator spoke minutes after attending an ODM Central Management Committee meeting that was chaired by ODM leader Raila Odinga, who recently returned to the country after a 2-week absence. At the meeting, top ODM party officials discussed the upcoming bitterly contested ODM grassroots elections that will begin on April 27th in Kwale, Siaya, and Busia counties.
Then on the 29th, we shall have grassroots elections happening in Kajiado, Migori, and Wajir counties. And on 30th of April, we shall have the exercise in Kisii, Vihiga, and Murang'a counties. A further timetable covering the next batch of counties shall be released in due course.
Also discussed at the meeting was the recent fake fertilizer scandal.
We reiterate that in view of the current delays and confusion over fertilizers, the prices of a product be subsidized further and reduced from the current 2,500 for a 50 kg bag to 1,500 as a show of remorse and apology and respect to our farmers.
David Muthoka, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, this is Sokoni, and of course, that is a catnip issue for this panel as well to just broach this development that we have, where we have a Kenya Power Chair, Joe Mudivo, and also where we have the Chair of KRA, who have been given those positions at the UDA to just make sure that the management of upcoming polls of the party is checking into place before then. I want just to pick up the brains of Patrick Obath on that, first of all. Is there any violation of a Public Ethics Act regarding public officers also being embroiled in politics? Do you think ODM, they have a point in what we've heard from the General Secretary?
You know, I will talk on my private sector experience, which is very clear, and I don't know whether within the Public Officers and Ethics Act and so forth, there are such statements. In a company, if you're involved, there's a very clear statement in the policies of that organization that says that you may not engage in any political activity whilst you're serving in that organization. And it starts from the most lowly employee all the way up to the chairman of the board. All those people have to be, you cannot mix the two. Personally, I had to resign from a board when I was appointed the chairman of the National Oil Company. I had to resign, and that was losing a lot of money compared to what you're getting at the National Oil Company. But I went there purely because I believed that we could actually turn around that company for the public good. So that's the only thing that took me there, not the money into that place. So from where I sit, I think the whole ethics of being politically connected and also trying to sort of discharge your fiduciary responsibility in an organization free of any external influence, especially political influence, I think should be the key thing that drives this. Now, whether within the public servants, within their code of conduct and everything else, there's a statement that says that they should not be involved in political activity when they're in those organizations, I cannot claim to know. But consider this, in a state corporation, who is it that you really have to be able to influence? It's the government. So if you're the chairman of Kenya Power, you need to be properly connected within government because it's a state corporation for you to be able to work very well. So is that a conflict of interest? I am not sure about it, right? But my personal compass would say that that should not be acceptable, that you're serving actively in an active political party, not government. You're actually going to do something in a political party. That is different from working with government. And I think in that particular situation, I would expect that those people would actually remove themselves from the job they're doing now or recuse themselves from the appointment they've been given and not mix the two. Political activity is different from working with the government. Right. Working with the government is a necessity because they are the ones who drive the rules and they're driving policy. But a political party, I would say that I do not consider this to be ethically correct, that somebody should be in charge of a board and at the same time be involved actively in a political party. That's my view.
All right. I think I will want to take a short break right now at 7 o'clock on the nose. When we come back, I think Punyasi Sakwa snugly fit this particular position to tell us, because he's chair of the Kenya Development Corporation, and also he's a party member of the ANC. So should he, peradventure, also be going for the grassroots elections? What happens really? So how do we uncouple this, that you're caught up on this sharp edge of a dilemma?
Starting with what?
We should start with the chair and tell us now, how do you handle this situation? perchance that now the president called upon you to come and, be officiating some of his party, of course, requirements and demands right now. And you are the chair of Kenya Development Corporation. You're watching Sokoni. We take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we begin with Bunyasi Sakwa to just clarify the situation. And of course, sorry? I'll defend you. And you will be defended by Professor Exen Iraki. We take a short break.